virginity here. It's a groundbreaking episode of my show here. Yeah. It's the first one that has video. Cool. So I'm very happy. I was actually supposed to do it for the last one, but I messed up. So I started recording on the camera, and then I minimized it because I didn't want to see my face on my computer. And as soon as I minimized it, the video stopped. So I got about a solid 10 seconds worth of video in.
Oh, that sucks.
The reason I actually chose you to be the next guest on the show is because of the last two people I had. So the last two people I had, one was the president of MSA, former president of MSA, and the second was the president of USG. Both of them come from Muslim families, immigrant families, and from the conversations that I've had with them, they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum here in terms of, not completely different, but like
I get it.
from what I know, like, they're, again, I don't know 100%, and I'm not trying to generalize completely, but they're relatively liberal individuals, and so what I wanted to show was that, the conversations I had with them kind of were focusing on the Muslim community and diversity, and how the last person I on he actually has a podcast called What Muslims Look Like.
I saw the page. It's
and
a cool page.
The idea of the podcast is that there's no one particular appearance. It varies and it spans demographics. And I think you're one of the perfect examples of that, which is why I wanted to have you on.
Cool, thank you.
So I already know this, actually, just read your article, I just told you that. Is I want you to kind of go into your background, like your family background, how they got here, where you're from. I think it was Brentwood. Yeah, and then just kind of your upbringing a little.
Okay.
So you can.
Well, my name is Fuad Faruque. In terms of like my background, my family, my mom and dad are both from Bangladesh. My dad came here in the late 80s, around 1993ish. That's when my mom came.
Okay.
They married in Bangladesh. My dad came to America first, and then so like he would go back and forth from America to Bangladesh, and then eventually he met my mom, and then he brought her to America too.
He came in the 80s? That's pretty early.
Yeah, like late 80s, like 87, 88.
Yeah, compared to because my dad came in 1970, and I know, like, from what I know, that's the earliest Bengali person that I know.
Yeah, like because the Bengali community was like almost non-existent.
Yeah, so that's pretty early compared to a lot of the other people I've also talked to.
Yeah,
they came like I'd say like mid to late 90s is when like a large influx of Bengali people started coming into the U.S.
Yeah. My dad told me about like the struggle. Like there were almost no Bengalis, like no sort of like food culture, like finding someone else.
You were alone.
Exactly.
You were alone. Yeah. So you came in the 80s, and then so when did you get married to your mom?
93.
Okay, so she
and
came
then, like,
in...
soon after she came to America.
Okay. And then, did they set up originally in Brentwood, or did they live somewhere else?
No, so I was born in 96. I was born in Queens, Elmhurst.
Oh, okay, you're really close to where I was. I was in Richmond Hill.
Cool.
And my ex-girlfriend actually lived in Elmhurst. I used to go there all the time.
Nice.
It's
right by Jackson Heights, too.
Yeah, it is. The thing is, it's really cool because there's a fine line where it goes from all, like, Asian in terms of, Chinese, Vietnamese... Korean, and then it goes straight to just like Bengali people and Indian people, and that's it. And it's like there's a very fine line. I forgot which street it was, but it was like, you know where the train tracks are?
Yes, exactly. Like right across the train track. That's where
it's a different territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So we lived there for, I don't know how long my parents lived there off the top of my head, but close to 10 years, like a little over. But around 2002, when I was 6 years old, that's when we moved to Brentwood in Long Island.
Okay, so they wanted like a nice house, away from a little like the kind of congestion, hustle and bustle. Or...
Exactly, they wanted like my dad, he worked in Hicksville already, so it was in Long Island, and they wanted to move a little bit away from like the hustle bustle, like the congestion. They want like more open area.
Yeah, that's what I mean. My family did exactly that. I live out in New Hyde Park now.
Oh, cool.
It's the same thing where it's like you come in and the easiest thing to do is live in the city for like job opportunities. Live in an apartment, share with people. Yeah. And then once you get the ball rolling, you move out and try to get that house. Yeah. So they moved out to Brentwood. So you were you said 6?
Yeah.
Okay. So and this is obviously like a central theme of you being here is political affiliations, which I personally hate. Focusing on that, but for you in particular, that's kind of the theme here. So, given that they were immigrants, given coming from a Muslim background, I'm assuming they have like a quote-unquote democratic viewpoint.
That's actually not the case. Interestingly,
okay, cool.
Yeah, interestingly, if you talk to most Muslim Americans, like before 9/11, before like 2001, most of them were Republican, very actively Republican. Like 80%, 70 to 80% of Muslims voted for Bush Jr. like in 2000. And like Reagan had like a lot of Muslim support, so did Bush Sr. He had like a good amount of Muslim support.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Statistically speaking, that was true.
It's like it's amazing. Like the demographics have radically changed since then. You know, but yeah.
So what do you think the demographic shift has been since then till now?
Strongly Democratic.
So because of post 9/11.
Yes.
Okay. Because I mean, for me, and I talked about this with a couple of the last guests, is that I've never had strong political affiliations because my family, though they kind of associate with the Democratic side, the liberal side, they aren't, you know, educated or really affiliated politically speaking.
Okay.
They spent their entire lives kind of just working and trying to, you know, make it, and that was their own goal. Like they didn't really have the time to have the privilege to think about those things, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's why for me personally, it's like I never really had strong opinions one way or the other. I kind of was always neutral. And Jeff actually is the reason I changed a little bit over time. Like I'd say because of my parents, I used to identify more, again, like a little bit on the liberal Democratic side, not even knowing what the terms meant really. Yeah. But then talking to Jeff and really getting, you know, more knowledge, I'd say, you know, for, you know, kind of like a vague use of the term, a little bit more conservative since my beginning of college.
Okay.
So your family was originally Republican or identified
so
as...
like if you talk to any like Bangladeshi or Bengali, like essentially like you'll know like politics isn't like their hearts. Like go to any living room at like a potluck, it's like all the uncles are talking about like politics left and right. So my dad was like he loved politics, like especially like Bengali politics, and when he moved to America, like he saw that he identified more with like the Republican Party and like conservative ideals. My mom never really affiliated. She was more liberal, but like she was never really strongly like political.
One way or the other. She was more like the neutral kind of standpoint.
Exactly.
Like, okay.
She was never really into it. Like even if she did have like you know viewpoints, she was never really. She never really got involved.
Maybe a little bit more busy with like keeping the family going and all that stuff, right?
Plus, like politics, she just said like she doesn't like the arguments and all that. Yeah.
I think that's a good standpoint too in a lot of ways. So how early on did you think that kind of that affected your viewpoints and caring? And I know this actually came up in the article, which I'm going to link in the description so people can read that. Okay. Is that I know a big factor of what impacted your care for politics is the existence of gang violence in the area, right? So I kind of want to go into that. It's like how early on did that kind of present itself in your life?
So I mean, like the gang violence in the area I grew up in Brentwood was always like a very prevalent thing. I wasn't really exposed to it or like knowledgeable. Like I didn't really know what that was until middle school, and that's when like the MS-13 like really started growing. Like according to like a timeline, like if you look at Brentwood as a timeline between like 1990 and like 1998, that's when there was like a very huge like spike in like gang violence. That died down up until like 2010-ish.
I think recently it's been going up again.
It's been going up and up again. So,
I think very recently there was a couple of arrests actually in the Long Island area. I think in the Suffolk County area for MS-13 gang members.
Yeah. So there's been a real big push from like the police, especially to like arrest them. But yeah, growing up, like right when I got into middle school, that's when like more workshops started setting up because like people, like even kids, like as young as like middle school and high school, they were like starting to wear gang colors, and like the school started noticing like the rise in gang activity. More drugs were being sold.
How large was your middle school when you went to middle school?
Middle school. That's a good question. I'm not really. I can't really say.
I mean, that was a long time ago. So
yeah,
it's understandable.
I can tell you high school populations.
I mean, I understand. I mean, my middle school wasn't in the best area either, and I remember gang violence being a big part of it. But my parents were very good at keeping me away, and there was a distinction in not to toot my own horn, but like I was in the A's class, which was like very obviously demographics of immigrant students. Yeah. Those who were kind of like their parents made sure to push them in the right direction. So I was never kind of open to the environment of gang violence or anything like that, and even though it was happening in my school. But yeah, I understand where you're
almost the same thing could be said about like my school too. Like if you're like in the AP classes and like the honors classes, like you were, I guess,
it's not that you
less
didn't
exposed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best word. That's what I was looking for. It's just that you didn't have for lack of words, opportunity to talk to the people who
Yeah.
are doing those things. So, I mean, middle school's pretty early. I thought you started thinking about, politics at middle school. But,
Yeah, politics started becoming like more prevalent for me. Like when
Mhm.
I started becoming more involved, like during the 2012 election. That
Okay.
would be when I was in 10th grade, actually.
So, early high
Like-
school.
Yeah, like ninth grade, like the election stuff was coming out. Like, oh, this guy called like Obama's running. Obama's running again.
Mm-hmm.
Mitt Romney's running. Yada yada yada.
So, this is the first time you're, like, conscious of political
Yeah,
beings or happenings.
exactly.
Okay.
And then like originally, because of like the area I grew up in, there were a lot of viewpoints I had that were, I guess you could say, like misrepresented. Like a lot of like just to be blunt, like a lot of people started saying like, oh, because of like the white man, like that's why our town is poor, that's why we're being
Mhm.
held down and stuff like that. Like that's why there's gang violence.
That doesn't...
It doesn't really make
Makes
sense,
sense, yeah.
but like according to them, like economic opportunity, like in like the long way, like because of white privilege and economic opportunities in other towns, that takes away from the economic opportunity in our town.
Okay, it's a weird
Yeah.
assumption to have made in terms of...
Yeah.
I understand what you're trying to say.
But like also like the whole white privilege thing, because I have like a darker skin tone, like
Mhm.
the opportunities like presented to me are
Yeah.
lessened. So I guess that sort of viewpoint was what.
Did
like,
you ever feel that way when you were in Long Island? Because actually, when I was talking
Yeah.
to... You did? Okay. that's-
No. Oh, sorry. No. What were you saying?
When I was talking to Ayan, he lived in Levittown,
Yeah.
which we went a little bit into the history of it. Levittown was predominantly a World War II veteran
Yes.
station where people were coming back from the war. They would be living there, which he was talking about. There was institutionalized racism because of the fact that there were so many people of that origin staying
Yeah.
there. So I'm wondering if living in Brentwood, have you experienced that form of racism?
Interestingly, I experienced. This is what moved me more like made me more politically conscious and moved me more conservative,
Mhm.
like to the Republican conservative view. I started watching like the Republican debates more, and I saw like there was this one guy who really stood out, who really had like a good amount of like traction. Ron Paul, he was getting like a lot of traction, especially from younger people, and like a
Yeah.
lot of his messages, really rang true to me. Like original conservatism, like Reagan conservatism, like
Mhm.
stop the endless wars, have like a balanced budget, and like
So more on the fiscal side.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then
I
like
think-
the social side too. Like if I have like there are some things like morally that should be stood up for to
Right.
keep society, I guess, like moral. And like that's where the religious part of my like
Mhm.
upbringing comes from. Like upbringing wise, like I grew up like in a Muslim household. So like being like modest and moral in like what you do in like your everyday life.
It's
like,
a crucial part of our upbringing.
yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So I mean that's a big part that Jeff really pointed out to me was that I think a big part of what causes issues with the whole Democratic versus Republican debate is the
Yeah.
fact that as soon as you pick one or the other,
Mhm.
and I talked to him in the conversation I had with him,
Yeah.
is that you bundle everything to that side.
Yes.
You assume that when you're a Democrat or a Republican, it comes with the whole package.
Yeah.
If you're the Democrat side, you're out of the bat, like off the bat, not out of the bat,
No,
off the bat, off the bat, you're going to be liberal. You're going to
Yeah.
stand for these social standpoints
Yeah.
and this fiscal policy.
Yeah.
Like I don't agree with that. I think it needs to be a more liquid system where you're picking and choosing because that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem because people nowadays it's. And this goes back to I always talk about Jordan Peterson thing because he's so there's so many truths to what he says. Is that
He's
this,
growing.
yeah, exponentially.
Yeah.
But I love him. He's so smart. It's crazy. He puts
Yeah.
like big things into just like understandable little quotes.
Yeah.
But he talks about the archetypes of hero and villain.
Yes.
And that always comes back to me where it's like there's always sides now, and I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes away from a true understanding of what's going on in any system.
Yeah.
Right.
But like in terms of institutionalized racism, like I faced the opposite because I was one of the only, because I'm South Asian, I'd be categorized as Asian.
Right.
Because I was Asian living in a predominantly Hispanic town, when it came time for like, our school didn't really have like a lot of funding. Like every time like budget stuff came up, like AP classes would get cut for more ESL classes, or additional buses because the schools were just too jam packed with kids and we needed more buses and stuff like that. When it came time for like summer programs or extracurricular programs, despite the town having like a percentage like 70% Hispanic, like 15% Black, like 12% white, and then like 2% Asian. If you were Asian or white, you were not allowed to apply for a lot of these programs unless you were...
You discriminated against.
Exactly.
Okay.
I was like the minority within the minority.
Yeah. No, it's actually a pretty big problem for the Asian community now.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this on my own, is when we apply, we, as in like any Asian, it's actually more difficult for us in the application process for any jobs or schools.
Yeah, affirmative action works against us.
Yeah.
We're the minority.
Yeah. And it sucks. I didn't know this until... I'd say my senior year being here, is that when I was putting Asian on all my applications for jobs or internships,
it hurts.
It hurts. Like I'm putting myself in another pool of people that are better off, generally speaking, in terms of like their qualifications. Yeah. And now I've made it more difficult for myself to get a position.
Yeah.
So now on all my applications, I just put nothing. I decline to stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, they can tell from your name, but like it helps when they're categorizing like the demographic, like internal demographics of whatever company.
I mean, the initial. Kind of bringing in of a resume is always algorithm based, so just first step at least I'll get a little bit further now.
Yeah, which is a huge problem. I mean back in like senior year when I was applying to college, like that was a big thing too. Like there were students that had like 1700s and 1600s in where I was I grew up in the same exact area as them, had the same opportunities as them, but despite them having like a 300-400 point difference in the SATs, schools. They would get into like Columbia and Cornell and stuff like that. I mean, I love the school I go to, but like in terms of like rankings and stuff like that, like some like they came out on top.
It's a difficult system to kind of quantify because I had the same issue when it came to EOP, Equal Opportunity Program. My parents aren't at the time, they weren't from the best financial standpoint. But I didn't get into the EOP program because of my education capability. Like my SAT score was apparently too high.
Yeah.
So like that's something that's like,
scary.
That's like, you know what I mean? Like I needed that at the time, and my parents have been kind of struggling to get me through college. Is that would have helped? That would have gotten me so much further, and maybe I would have gotten to schools that I wasn't able to. Yeah. And I didn't get in because I was too qualified, which is...
I understand EOP being financial based, like that would make 100% sense. I don't understand why then it says like, oh, if you have an SAT above like 1800 or something, you can't apply. You can get it. So I had never made sense to me. I think I had a 20 something with my super score. Yeah. And all the schools that I applied for the EOP programs, they said you're too good, like you can't get in. And I was like, but I need the help. Like, and it's just it's a weird thing, and I don't know how you find a system that can accommodate for the span of demographics, which is it's difficult. I mean, personally, I say take race out of it and look at it from not just economic standpoint, but like your geological location, because like $100,000 on Long Island goes much less than $100,000 upstate.
Right, 100% true.
Yeah, like the average, like Brentwood is considered to be like a very low class, low income town. The average income is like $65,000, whereas that would upstate like get you much farther.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to get into was actually I don't know this is your major and what you decided to do in your college career and whether it was we'll go into the your affiliations with the club. Yeah. But kind of first of all just your major and like education wise, like has it been kind of more affiliated with the politics and poli-sci and such? Yeah. Because you said it was pretty early on that you started getting into this stuff around 10th grade and all that. Yeah.
So major-wise, I'm a biology major specializing in developmental genetics with a minor in political science.
Okay, so the minor is like out of passion a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, it's fun. I like politics. If I could double major in it, I could have. If I started like early on, I declared it like
just later on down the line?
Yeah, later down the line.
The Bengali uncles would be proud of you.
No, they would not.
Okay. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. But the politics part,
they'd be happy I'm talking to them about it. Not that like I declared it as a major.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They always want the young doctor engineer. But I mean, I came in on the pre-med track. I'm still. I hope I still am. Like, it's always hard. Like you take your MCAT, and you don't know what's happening.
Have you taken your MCAT yet?
I've taken my MCAT. Okay. So, I'm taking a gap year right after I graduate. I'm a senior now, last semester, and
it's scary.
Yeah,
I'm at the same point.
It's spooky, man. I don't know. But even though I'm a biology major, I mean, of course I took all like the biology classes like 203 and stuff like that, like the difficult ones, but I always tried to take like at least one poli-sci class a semester because I just liked politics a lot, and the way I see it is politics isn't like, it isn't just like with national level stuff. It's always, politics is everywhere.
Right.
Even in a hospital, politics is there.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing that really, really stood out to me when I started talking to Jeff here in college.
Yeah.
Is that he started talking about localized government.
Yeah.
Just things in your district, your municipality, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I realized like I take no part in any of that. And again, it comes from the fact that my family never took part in any of that.
Yeah, but like being on the, like joining the PTA meetings like actually has like a really big impact.
And it's crucial to, to get your voice heard. Actually, this is something that me and Ayan talked about, was that now in the Bengali community, in the Muslim community, there are more people that are taking roles in, positions where they're representing their community. And that's crucial, because how are you going to be heard? How is what you want to happen going to happen if no one's representing it? Yeah. And I think that's very important.
I think that actually, in your question with institutionalized racism, that actually comes into a part, because in the past, like, I mean, if you look at it black and white, America did have like a, racist background back when minority groups were excluded or, not included in various things. So various like South Asian groups like, Bengalis and Indians and Pakistanis, when they came to America, going into business or politics was much more difficult,
right,
because they could be discriminated against. It depends on who's in power at that point. But in terms of like STEM fields, like if you're a doctor and engineer, it doesn't matter like what your skin color is. At that point, it's just how well of a doctor you are. Exactly. Yeah. But now, like as like we have second, third generation like South Asians, and like I guess to me, I don't see that institutionalized racism affecting society as once upon a time did. People are getting more and more involved in politics, and they're seeing like I guess like the effects of it. So
yeah, I think right now, people say that there's still lots of racism. I mean, it's true, there is, but I think right now in America's history, it's one of the most equal opportunity times that there's ever been. Yeah, I think everyone
100% agree.
I mean, I think history has affected how much say people can have right now, but I think if you really wanted to, you can have a say. I think if you really wanted to, represent a community, if you really wanted some change to happen, you can make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, most, like, if you look at the Asian population, that's like, if you go to New York City, like, that's like a perfect example. You can see, like, various Chinese, Korean, Indian Americans who come in with nothing. Like, come in with, like $1 to their name. They set up, like, they work day and night as taxi drivers, laundromat, like, owners and stuff like that. They bust their ass and they put their kids like to like a specialized high school, like get them tutoring and stuff like that. They focus on like education so much that eventually their child succeeds. You always want your son to do better than what you did, so that's exactly like what they did.
I mean, that's literally, you just summarized my family right there. Is my parents did the same thing. I mean, they worked their asses off. They made sure that I got into specialized high school. I went to Queens High School for Sciences, and because of that, I was able to get into Stony Brook. And now I have the privilege to care about these types of matters. Yeah. And I mean, I think people really don't take this into account, is that making decisions like that, it is a privilege. A lot of immigrants just don't have the time to take that into consideration.
I don't know. I wouldn't agree with that sentiment, like, because I feel that because politics is like all around us, and like anything you do does have politics in it. I think like if you wanted to, you could get involved. Of course, like
I agree with
if you wanted to spend your time getting involved in local politics, like that's much harder to do. But I guess having like an opinion and voice could be like it's much more, I guess, easy to do. It's just watching TV and stuff like that.
That's true.
Getting involved is 100% much more difficult, and I understand if you're working like 9 to 9 every day, like that's
you're not gonna have the time. You're not gonna have the time or the energy.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So the next thing I want to get into is because of your background. Yeah. Being, and we talked a little bit about this. We talked about racism and all that. Being from a Bengali Muslim background. Yeah. But then being on more of the Republican side, do you think in the Republican community that you were ever discriminated against or felt out of place, or you ever felt a sense of like animosity in any sense?
Well, that's also like a double-edged sword. Like I've felt animosity, to be honest, on both sides. Okay. So on the I'll discuss the Republican side because you addressed that first. So on the Republican side, there are like and any party has like, you know, that are extremists, but like
Right.
there are people like on the Republican side that say like, you know, Muslims don't belong in America, like they don't follow the Constitution, and some other conspiracy theories that we're some sort of hive mind, which is like oh, you know, little Hamza like in California believes the same thing I do, like,
Right.
like that's not the case.
Some people.
Yeah. Yeah, there has been like some animosity I faced because of like my background, but like I never let someone else's like bigotry or misunderstanding affect my views, because my views are my views, and if someone else doesn't like that, like if they don't like that, I don't care. Like
Right.
they can simmer in their own pot. I don't
Right,
really
right.
care.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Good independent thought. I think more people need to have that.
Yeah.
A lot of people like going with the status
sheep
quo, the
mentality.
sheep mentality of let me just, you know, this makes sense. You know, my friends are doing this. These
Yeah.
people are doing this. I associate with them.
Yeah.
I might as well just, you know, follow this path.
Yeah.
So you said you also felt it from the other side too.
Yeah. So once I became more vocal with my politics, like I you know, stand for more Republican conservative ideals. Like I've been called Uncle Tom like so many times. It's annoying. Like as soon as that article came out about my support for like Trump's like border wall, and like when I helped him come to Brentwood, I didn't help him come to Brentwood. When I helped the volunteers go to there,
Yeah.
like
When you helped, you know, or showed your support
Yeah.
for everything that was going on during the Trump campaign or
Yeah.
whatever was going on at
well,
the time.
like that's actually like I'll talk to you about that later. But
Okay.
essentially, yeah, I was called an Uncle Tom. I was called like a race traitor, stuff like that, and like that always annoyed me, because most people, like especially younger Muslims, they always assume that if you are a Muslim, you're liberal, but I'm not, and they assume that because I am not like. Because I'm not liberal, they assume I'm not a true Muslim. They assume that I'm not religious. That's disgusting to me. I pray 5 times a day. Like,
You do?
know?
You do?
Yeah, I mean, okay,
Oh.
not always on time, but
Okay, no, but okay. The fact that you pray at all, is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, is high respect to you, because I don't pray.
okay.
No,
Most of my friends don't either.
Yeah, my mom prays 5 times a day, and I know how crucial. I mean, not crucial. How difficult that may be at times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changing constantly with sunrise and sunset, and then
Yeah.
5 times a day is a lot. I'm not gonna lie.
Ramadan keeps getting worse and worse, man. Like,
Yeah,
it gets
days
longer.
are so long. I think it was it last year was like 13 hours. It was
Yeah,
like 5
mid-July. Like,
yeah,
oh
it was
my
like, I
gosh.
think it was 5 a.m. to like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I was dying.
Dude, when I was a
not
kid, it was like
capable.
during December, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Yeah, it was during December, and you'd be done at like 5 p.m. Like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom told me it's like you should be happy because you kind of like trained your way to this point.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna work your way backwards. But I'm like, I just don't like it at all.
My
Like,
mom
this
said
is
the same
not-
Yeah.
Brown moms, am I right?
Yeah. But yeah, I've gotten that sentiment, like, even on campus too. Like, some of the Muslim students, they don't see me as being one of them, despite I celebrate the holidays, I pray and stuff, but yeah.
I think that's more important. Is again, and we talked about this in the beginning. Is
Yeah.
the moral compass. And it doesn't matter, you know, what a person does. You know, just leave them be. I don't understand that idea of just like you have to be, and the grouping thing. Like you have to be one or the other, or you can't be any.
Yeah.
I think that's just wrong. And
do
I talked to Ion about this too. Is that the MSA on campus has had not a history, but a kind of there is evidence that they are kind of like an enclosed circle, like a closed group type of thing.
Yeah.
Where it kind of, you know, to outsiders of any form, you just wouldn't, you know, want to be a part of it in a sense. Where it's like you felt like you couldn't integrate with them.
Like, I love the MSA on campus. Like, they do a lot of work on campus. They do a lot of volunteering and stuff like that. So, I mean, they're okay, like, in terms of, like, you know, their involvement. But, like, that I've felt that sentiment personally where they could be very, like, not inclusive.
It's skewed. And, I mean, for me, I felt the same way because for my freshman and sophomore year, I would try to go. My mom would yell at me constantly, please go to MSA, like, you know, Friday prayers, do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I tried. I did. And it's like whenever I went there, it's not that they excluded me. It's that they had this own clique type of thing where it was like, and again, this goes to the grouping thing where it's like we follow all of these things. Like this is what it means to be us.
Yeah.
And like it's not like they said it in any way or form. They on the top, like they want everyone to be there.
Yeah.
But you feel it as like it's a one group. You feel the inertia of them like on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which it is what it is.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but you know.
Yeah. So you felt it from the Democratic side as well. So when you're going to like other clubs and such.
Yeah, like, oh gosh, like I felt it, and it's been annoying, but whatever. Like as I said, like let them simmer to themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. It's people are people. You know what you gonna do.
Yeah.
Last thing I actually want to talk about, and this is like. Honestly, like I covered a lot more topics than I thought, a lot faster than I thought I would.
Okay.
But I wanted to go into your thoughts on Trump era politics.
Okay.
And kind of the things that he's been working towards, the shifts that he's made and is currently working on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the article discussed your support for the wall.
Yeah.
Your viewpoint on immigrants, and a couple of other things that I'm kind of blanking on right now.
No, it's fine.
So I kind of just want to go into all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, initially, I personally didn't support Trump because of his brashness. Like to me, it might sound like bad to some people, but I truly see as like America as being like one of the biggest and strongest superpowers on the planet.
Without a doubt.
And because of that, we should have a moral compass as to who represents us and who's the dignitary that's supposed to be the face of America.
That was my biggest issue. Is not his fiscal policies, not his foreign. Policies in terms of how we deal with other countries. It's just the way he deals with other countries, other people. It's just it's disrespectful, and I think if you're in a position of such height, of such power, you
such
represent
honor too.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes back to representing people. It's when you're representing an entire country.
Yeah.
You mean you need to take into consideration that you're representing an entire population of peoples, and it's just. Some of the things that he says, it's just like, how is he getting away with it? It doesn't make sense to me. But let's focus on the policies instead.
So, initially, I supported Rand Paul because he had, a background I really enjoyed. He had a STEM background. He was a doctor, an ophthalmologist, doing eye surgery every other month in, Peru and stuff like that for free to people. So he's literally curing the blind, that's a cheesy joke.
But that is some next level philanthropy right there.
Yeah. So I really liked his policy. He had he wasn't like his father where it was more libertarian. He tried to include some libertarian ideas of stay the hell away from my house and let me be me. But he incorporated the moral Republican moral conservative outlook on it. Where some parts of government are necessary to keep, I guess, a moral society. Right. So I really enjoyed him because he was also very inclusive. The amount of support he had from various groups, it was phenomenal. He was very well spoken to, very well educated and everything, the whole 9 yards. He dropped out because he wasn't able to garner the right amount of support.
That's pretty. I forgot. I think that was.
He dropped out right after Iowa, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, right when what's his name? Ben Carson beat him. That was a signal for him to get out.
Is that his support was just not strong enough to keep going at that point?
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
A lot of media was saying oh, if he can get 10,000, 11,000 votes like his father did during the same time, he would be able to garnish 25 or something percent to keep him afloat. He'd get in the top 3.
Right.
He wasn't able to do that. His message just didn't get out as much as it could have. So after he dropped out, I supported Ted Cruz. He's a that's also a very controversial figure in the Muslim community.
Right.
It was more so because he was a very, very strong conservative on most of his viewpoints, and I really supported him on his immigration stances and his economic policies. What he had that Rand Paul had that no other candidate had was a proposal for a flat tax.
Okay.
Tax everyone who makes above, I believe, $85,000 or $60,000, the same 15%, and it might have been 17%, but it would be fair to everyone. And the rich are still paying more, and the middle classes they're paying less. And if you're making under $60,000, you're paying nothing.
Okay.
So, and numbers wise, that made sense. He could keep the country afloat without making too much fuss. So I really enjoyed that. And it turns out when it did come time for questions, when people questioned him about his views on Muslims and stuff like that. He knows that no matter what view he has on religion, he's a very staunch Christian. The religious views that he rights that he fights for Christians will be reflected towards Jews and Muslims too. And like he knows that like back in the day, like a lot of Muslims were very Republican, very conservative until like the anti-Muslim backlash. So I supported him. I voted for him during the primary.
Okay.
But then he dropped out too.
Right. It's just not working out for you at this point.
Oh my gosh.
So you're at this point you're just left with
either Trump or Hillary. That's what I was left with. And
so you went Trump over crooked Hillary.
Yeah. I mean Gary Johnson, like the Libertarians.
Gary Johnson just didn't. He
had every opportunity under the sun, and he threw it away. He was getting too high, like. Oh my gosh.
There was literally there's no one else. If he really just came out and really like went out of his way to have his name put out there.
A Republican governor from a blue state with his running mate as a Republican governor from a blue state. Yeah. He had.
He really blew it. There's a really funny video. This guy and he's just yelling. It's like Gary Johnson, who the fuck is you? Like, where you been? Like, I never seen you. And it's like, if you look back or you think back to the elections and when it was happening, you never see anything correlated to
the Libertarian. No, this time, like, the Libertarians had the media coverage they needed, like, they wanted. Like, CNN covered the Libertarian convention for, like, the first time ever, I believe. And one of the, like, I think campaign managers for one of the campaigns thought he was too serious, so he stripped down to a thong on stage on live TV.
What?
Wait,
what?
Yeah, exactly. Like right there, like he did that CNN cut, and then like he thought the convention was too serious, so he wanted to make it into a joke, and that's what the party became, a joke.
Oh my god! What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
That's so weird. Why would you?
Exactly.
I feel like the world is becoming a reality TV show.
Yeah,
it's just getting worse and worse.
But Trump had like views that on immigration and like I guess like solving some of the issues that I felt that I could correlate with. So like the wall, like every major country on the planet has some sort of border security and border with like their neighbors. So like why should we not, if Mexico has a wall on their southern border, I feel that we should be allowed to have a border on our southern border
okay, too. But I'm always neutral on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
When it came to the wall, the thing that didn't make sense to me, it's the economic standpoint of it, is that do you think that it's economically viable to create a wall of this capacity?
I personally think so because when he kept saying like we're gonna make Mexico pay for it, like Mexico's not gonna walk over and give us $20 billion to build a wall, but there are ways to make Mexico pay for it. So we know like in America that money gets wired to various Central American and South American countries. If we threaten to cut that like source of illegal income that comes from America straight to like El Salvador and Mexico will be very quick to pay for that wall.
Right.
Same for if we tax it. Like right now, you can just wire the money for free. If we tax it, well, there you go. You're making revenue to pay for the wall.
If you did that, then you'd have to tax all other immigrants that are wiring money across country. Yeah. Because that's a big thing in any, I think, immigrant community.
Yes.
Those who have had the ability to come here will send money back to their family at home. I know my family does that for sure.
Yeah.
So then you'd have to keep it equal, keep the playing field equal. You'd have to do that to everyone. So like, would you be supportive of doing that across the board?
Yeah. Like taxing it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But if you threaten to like, because we know like every year we have about half the illegal immigrants that come into the country are directly from Mexico. The other half are people who overstay the visas from various parts of the world. Right. So if we know that there are this many people from Mexico coming here illegally and then wiring that money straight back to Mexico out of our economy, like we could threaten that to Mexico, and
at that point they would rather have the money inflow than
than like they'd rather pay once to like help secure a border between both nations.
It's like more like a one-time fee type thing versus a long-term
economic downfall, economic loss.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Okay.
Plus, like a physical border is kind of better than what we have now. Like, there are parts of the border that are like broken fences,
wide
and,
open.
Exactly, wide open too.
Yeah. So another thing with the wall is that with its capabilities at keeping illegal immigrants out, how capable would it be? Because I've watched and people are probably gonna shit on me when I say this. I've watched a couple of John Oliver videos. Obviously, it's not like the best resource, but
it's okay.
Yeah, but he
I love Stephen Colbert too. Yeah.
I mean, they say something. They talk about things that you wouldn't really think about otherwise. But this is a while ago, and he's talking about the feasibility of having illegal immigrants still getting over the wall and still coming to the U.S. and do you think that the wall would be capable of, like the price of having that wall, would it be capable of stopping enough of an inflow?
Yeah, I think it would. There's never going to be a 100% solution, but if you have a wall there now, it would 100% slow down people. It would deter people. It would like keep out it would keep out the people that would normally come in when there is no border. And I think that's very crucial. Like not because I'm trying to be like a bigot saying like keep people out. I say 100% if you come to the country the legal method, like
that's fine.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Like it took my aunt and uncle like 8 and 10 years respectively.
Yeah. So, I mean, same thing with my family. My mom, came here. She applied for all of her siblings. Yeah. And they're here. I mean, it took a long time. It took forever, I think.
And I think that's unfair. It's unfair to us when we're waiting, and people are gonna hate on me for saying this, but people have like the privilege to walk over a broken fence. Like, it's unfortunate.
No, I understand where you're coming from. People are gonna. People on the internet and anyone will take that section and say, "Oh, you're saying they have the privilege."
BuzzFeed prevents.
But I understand what you're saying is that they have they kind of get to skip all of the requisites and all of the problems and issues and paperwork that you would need to actually gotten here legally. So that makes sense.
And like, I mean, in my neighborhood, like Brentwood, the reason there is so much gang violence, like a lot of the people who are there illegally are from El Salvador, and that's where MS-13 comes from. It originates from El Salvadorian illegal immigrants. Okay. So, just to put into like the context of numbers, like illegal immigration, like people are going to say like, oh, it helps our country and stuff like that, but realistically, it costs our country over $20 billion a year.
Illegal immigration?
Yeah, okay. Because if you look at it from like a economic standpoint, where if you have someone here illegally, in any sort of public school, when you go there, how much do you think it costs for a student to attend a public school?
A lot more than you'd think.
Yeah. Like, people think, like, oh, private school is like $20,000 a year. Well, for a public school, it costs, like, in Brentwood, the cost per pupil, like the cost per student. Was about $8,000 per kid.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, right now, I'm in New Hyde Park right now, and I was just talking to a friend about this actually recently, is that my parents are, I mean, some of the financial troubles they're having right now is because of the taxes in Nassau County. I think
it's through the roof.
Yeah, I think it's like $12,000 to $15,000 a year
to live in like a small house. Like it's not like you're living on like 30 acres of property. It's like a suburban house.
Yeah,
like,
you get
taxes are nuts.
You get a couple rooms and nice little living area, but nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And I think about it now because coming from Queens originally, knowing the difference in the tax bracket, and seeing the difference in the resources that are presented to us, it's a astonishing difference, and it makes sense. We're paying for these resources, so when you have someone here that they came here illegally, they're not paying their taxes or whatever it may be, they're kind of leeching onto these resources and taking them.
Yeah, exactly. Like the resources that would normally be allocated to the school, making it better, is like being taken to I mean, to educate them, which is good, but like. At the end of the day, like everyone suffers when there's less resources available.
And you brought this up earlier. Is your school? I think it was middle school. Had that problem where AP
middle and high school.
And high school. Okay.
Yeah. Like
did you go to a public high school in the area?
Yeah.
Okay. So like you're talking about like buses.
Dude, my graduating class was 1,100 kids.
Oh man.
And my high school was only 10 to 12, and it had over 4,000 students.
Oh, how densely populated was your area?
About 60,000 people live in Brentwood.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a small place. Like if you look at our map, it's a small place, but like
it's like a small town.
Yeah. There are houses that have like 7, 8 like people living like 4 or 5 families living in like the same house. Like
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's how they pay. That's how people pay the taxes off.
Okay. So next thing would be going into I want to say crap. What was I gonna say?
The Trump thing.
Yeah. Going into Trump era policies on. So we talked about the wall, but I want to talk about immigration through DACA, which is a problem right now. For people who don't know, or people who just don't remember what the acronym is, I actually wrote it down. It's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and that's actually an issue that's ongoing as of right now. Yeah. I think they haven't extended it as of yet. Just water right there. That's
right. Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. I should have let you know earlier. Get parched eventually, but I think right now they're still in the process of trying to find a bipartisan agreement on extending DACA. And so I wanted to know what your thoughts on that were, because I think, I forgot how many years, but Trump is the first person to not extend DACA in a long time. Yeah, so I just wanted to know, can you get your thoughts on that?
Personally, for DACA, like, these are children who came in illegally too, but like it wasn't by choice. It was by
Right.
their parents' choice.
Their parents.
But I mean, if I'm going to be a hardline on something, I should like if I want to be consistent, I have to be consistent. It's not that I have to be, but like to me, it's important that we still don't discriminate against the people who are trying to come here illegally.
Right.
So I mean, it would be wrong to like deport people who are here when they were 1 year old and this is the only country they knew, this is the only language they know. So the way I would go about it, and the way I view it, I think Trump was wrong on that, and many conservatives thought he was wrong on that too. I follow like more of Ted Cruz and Rand Paul's like plan on that. It was to, I guess, there's a couple solutions, and one of them that makes the most sense to me is to like not integrate them into the country like immediately, but to give those who are here illegally a chance to integrate into society, become legal citizens, so that
so they're kind of contributing members of society instead of just being here.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, the figure people like to bring up is they contribute with taxes, but that's a voluntary thing where. Exactly. It's debatable because voluntarily people will get an INS number, or involuntarily people will pay sales tax on like.
And on top of that, I mean, given the fact that a large majority of these people are illegal immigrants, you're not going to have a lot of the data presented to you.
Exactly, 100%. So, essentially, give those people in segments, like don't give like all like 5 million or 3 million the estimate people like green cards immediately, but give people in staggered amounts work visas. Where if they're on a work visa for 5 to 7 years, then they slowly they're still in America, they're in the process of becoming a citizen.
They're kind of like getting vetted into the system.
Exactly, right. And they're not being deported.
I think that's the same thing for if you immigrate here legally, because I know all of the family members that I've had who have come here legally, they've had to take their their citizenship tests and all those things. Yeah. So something along those lines where you're kind of proving your patriotism in a sense. Yeah. Because I think right now is a big time in America where it's such a culturally diverse country that we're losing a sense of patriotism. Yeah. In a sense, in a large amount of the populations. Not like a broad scale.
I think it isn't because of the multiculturalism. I think it's more because the idea of the melting pot is disappearing. It's now becoming more of the salad bowl. Which
I found to that.
So,
what do you mean?
Yeah, I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago. Like, I didn't know until I became an RA either. I always thought it was a bad term. Salad bowl means you keep your cultural identity and you keep like your language and traditions and things, which is very welcome. Everyone should and can if possible. But they keep to themselves with their culture and traditions. But because they're all in the same bowl, like someone's a tomato, someone's a lettuce, they all make up like one salad. Okay. But in the melting pot,
everything mixes
together.
I get it. Okay. That makes
sense.
The
idea of the salad bowl is being pushed more and more, it seems, especially on like college campuses. Where...
I 100% agree with that. That's actually a really good. That's a really good. I don't know why I never thought about that before. Yeah. But it makes sense. You're putting a bunch of things together, but they're separate.
Yeah. But essentially that's the idea that's being pushed. So, I mean, even in the past, we had Polish, Jewish, like various like. Russian immigrants who culturally were different from the American values at the time, but it melted together. Right. It made like
that sense of integration, and I think that makes sense if you have a more extenuated process of making sure that these people, and I say these people, I feel like someone's gonna yell at me, but
those who are here illegally.
Illegally, yeah. If you have that process, then they're gonna be more inclined to care about what's going on and take a role in the society that they're within now.
Exactly.
Okay. It's a very good argument.
I haven't looked into that is I believe one solution, and those who are here, I guess who overstay their visas, you can e-verify them, which I think is one good way to keep track of who's here and who should be here when.
What did you
e-verify?
E-verify?
Yeah.
What is it? It just sounds like electronic verify.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Just making sure. Okay.
But some other proposals that are out there, this is the one Rand Paul proposed in against Trump's one, where we have 1.2 immigrants coming to this country every year. Cut that number to 1 million people a year, and those 200,000 give 200,000 people who are here illegally a work visa. So the number of immigrants coming to the country is the same, but you stagger it. So for 5 to 10 years, make it so only 1 million people can come, and then 200,000 people who are here are internally being immigrated to America.
Right. that is a more logical system. I think you can't have a very strict cutoff because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You need to wean the system off, and the way things are going right now, you can't just shift immediately. That's not how a system's going to work. It's got complex and macroeconomic scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Last thing is just Trump's tax policies.
Yeah.
Which I think recently I think it was in February that it's going for this fiscal year is going to be in place.
Yeah.
But I personally am a very big advocate of the corporate tax cuts, of the change in overall tax policy for families. I think having what's it called? One-time deduction. Overall, it makes it easier for a lot of families, for a lot of people.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Generally speaking, I mean, I just did. I was actually going through tax files with my parents recently. Taxes are goddamn complicated, and I think
they're awful.
It's so bad. Like I was looking at what the accountant was doing.
Taxation is theft, man.
And I was looking through it, and I was like, how do you there's 20 different papers of just things, and I'm just like, this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
If you didn't know about these deductions, you wouldn't be able
wouldn't
to
take advantage of it.
Yeah, you wouldn't take advantage of it. So it is skewed towards those who are educated enough to be able to take that decision into account.
Yeah.
So I'm all for his tax policies, making it simpler.
Yeah.
And the corporate tax cut, in my opinion, is huge, going from 35% to I think 24%. I think it was an 11% decrece.
Yeah.
I think having a 35% tax on companies
it hinders business.
Yeah.
I believe 100%.
100%. And we've already seen companies, and a lot of companies are starting to take action because of that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of companies have given I think $1,000 raises to all its employees across the board. That's crazy. First of all, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of big companies. I know Bank of America, AT&T,
Walmart, I believe.
Yeah. So that's big. And then there's also a lot of companies that are in the process of bringing, what's it called, buildings or infrastructure back to the U.S.
Yeah.
So you're already seeing some of the changes coming about.
Yeah.
And so I'm a huge advocate. So
I think
your thoughts on that.
I think it's very good, especially if you own a small business. Like these corporate tax cuts and tax cuts for businesses, they're not just for the billionaire, multi-billion industries. It's also for small businesses,
Right.
So if you're a small business owner and you see that, at the end of the year I'm getting $2,000 more than I could have, for a lot of families, that's a lot of money. That can go towards a lot of different things.
I mean, that's a semester's of tuition for me, and I mean after everything. And just sometimes my parents, had a little difficulty doing that. So I mean, it makes a difference to a lot of families, and especially those who have small businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I understand that too. I have FAFSA and TAP. Economic difficulties. Those $2,000. It's a big thing for various families, especially for the middle class too. A lot of people are against it because they see that the richest bracket, they're getting their tax cut from 35 to 33%, which is small, but it adds up. But I mean, the middle class is seeing a tax cut too. So I think it's important that people also focus on middle America.
Just overall what's going on. I think people want to look at what's at someone else's plate before they look at what's going on in theirs. And I think a big part of that is, I mean, if you take into consideration that someone who's making a lot of money has worked to make that money, has got there on their own, whatever means it may have been, they've earned the money that they're making.
Most of the top bracket are composed of professionals, like engineers, doctors, and lawyers.
Who've worked to get there.
The top 0.001, that's where you start seeing your Bill Gates and stuff like that. But
so when you look at these people, you think, they already have so much money. When you take more, if you start taking more and more money away from all these people,
they're gonna leave.
Yeah, first option, they're gonna leave. They're just I don't want to deal with this. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Second option, you start hindering their desire to produce. Because once they have, it's diminishing returns. Once they start saying, if I start making this much income, I go bump up in my tax bracket, then I lose more money than I would have made if I just stayed here. So why would I produce more?
It also hinders the trust they have in the government, because that's when you start seeing people start taking their money and hiding it in offshore accounts.
Right.
I don't want this money to be taxed to nothing. I'll keep it in this country, or instead of investing in a real estate property or cars and stuff like that in America, I'm gonna go buy stuff in China and India and stuff like that. So it really does give a psychological effect as to the people in the richer brackets. So.
Right. Yeah, I think that has covered almost all the questions that I had for you.
Cool.
I think that covers everything. I think I said I think a lot in this.
I mean, for that Trump article, by the way, the reason that was written was pure luck.
What do you mean?
For that article, it was about me and 10 other students that were at the event when Trump came to Brentwood.
It was for CPAC, right?
It wasn't for CPAC.
It wasn't? Okay, so what
when
happened?
Trump came to Brentwood to address like the MS-13 gang violence, the event was originally open to the public.
Okay.
Then they closed it to the public and made it police only.
Mm-hmm.
But me and like 10 other students were still able to get in because I'm the Long Island chairman of like the college Republicans like in the region.
Yeah.
So the chairman of like the Republican Party said like, oh, if you have college Republicans who would like to go there, volunteer and see Trump, you have 10 tickets. Allocate them as you will. So because I was a chairman, I got to pick 9 other students who would come with me. Mm-hmm. And then like a newsday reporter was like, everyone here's like, it wasn't just officers, it was like majors and like people who had like...
Really, I'm assuming you just stood out in the crowd.
Yeah, like everyone was like a 35, 40-year-old, like 50-year-old like major corporal or whatever. And then they see like 10 like little... teenagers in those suits.
It's like, what are these kids
waving like a flag and stuff like that. Like, who are these kids? Like, why are they like walking in and out of the event like they own the place?
Yeah, I think that's the most
badass.
That's the most important thing and reason why I wanted to have you on. And it's a good point that you bring this up. Yeah. Is that when people think Republican, they think old white male conservative.
Yeah.
Like off the bat, like that is their thought process. That is the train of thought that they go through.
Yeah.
That's wrong. You're the complete opposite of that. You're literally in every way. You're the complete opposite of that. But there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I think everyone should have their viewpoints and be able to exercise them.
Yeah, and I think it's good that the GOP is now making Trump might hinder some of that. Like, I mean, just to be blunt, like nothing against like the president, but like some of his statements seem as very inflammatory and divisive. But like the party in general is becoming like I guess more like. They're seeing the issues that they have in terms of like being inclusive.
Inclusive, yeah.
And they're making efforts to like be more inclusive. So you see that reflected too. Like, interestingly, because like so many Muslims in America do like have small businesses and stuff like that, Trump did appeal to many Muslims. Just to throw out some statistics, only 40% of like Muslims, like after 80%, 70 to 80% voted for Bush Jr. In 2000, only 30 to 40% voted for him in 2004.
Okay, so
in 2000,
okay, wow, that is a staggering difference.
If you look up, there are articles that show like just the radical shift in like.
Dude, I mean, this is news to me. I didn't know that the Bengali community was this.
I mean, the Muslim community in general, because Muslims aren't also like one block, because there are African American Muslims, South Asian Muslims. So we were a very heavily contended voting block in 1996 and 2000. 2008 for Obama, about 4 or 5% voted for McCain. In 2012, only like 3% of Muslims voted for Mitt Romney. Okay. But then in 2016 for Trump, 13% of Muslims voted for Trump.
That's the first uptick. After that's the first of downs.
Exactly, and that's after him making statements like Muslim ban and stuff like that.
Which says a lot. Okay, wait. I also want to get into that. I'm happy you brought that up. Is that I almost forgot? I
was surprised it wasn't brought up.
I completely forgot. I should have written that down. I just didn't. When it comes to the Muslim ban, so my issue with that was the fact that a lot of the countries that were put on the list of banned countries were not countries that known terrorist affiliations have been from. So I'm confused as to why there's support for that.
The list of countries that was included, that was presented to us by Trump, it was the same list of countries that Obama had deemed to be high-risk countries. I'm not saying just because he did it, it's right that Trump is doing it. But like the logic behind it wasn't that like terrorists are coming from those countries here. It's just they have a lot of internal terrorism in their country.
Okay, so like overall, just kind of hindrance of the capability in general from that region, not those countries in specific, but the region. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, those countries too. Like there are a lot of like terrorist cells in like like Yemen and stuff like that. But I mean, my issue was with that. If you're going to implement some sort of ban, like the logic should be there. Right. I mean, why would Saudi Arabia, where like 14 of the 19 hijackers came from, why are they not on the list? Why aren't?
Yeah. See, like that was.
Why isn't like Wahhabism being targeted from the country that is like spreading Wahhabism, So, I mean, realistically, like there can be no like sort of religious ban because I can walk down the street to a church and say, "Voila, I'm a Christian." But like, Like,
because you can't identify someone as a religion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult to do because that's a belief. That's not a.
If they want to limit immigrants from like X, Y, Z countries, like, sure, like let's talk about that. But
there can't be inconsistencies in the way you describe or implement the system.
Exactly. So just because Saudi Arabia has a lot of oil money doesn't mean, we should give them a free pass, even though they're getting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, I'm
very generally
happy.
Against the Muslim ban in its original context.
I mean, just because it blocks off an entire community.
It blocks off a religious group that realistically can't be blocked off.
Right.
Because then you would have to ban not just the Muslims, but Christians and Jews from that country who are also escaping persecution, just like the Muslims who are facing terrorism. Right.
I think there's a lot more complexities to all of these issues than people that people just don't take into account.
Yeah.
I think it's not as simple. It's not black and white. It's never black and white.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the main issues that causes a kind of inability to make the proper decisions and to kind of identify as one or the other before coming to an educated decision.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to have had you on because...
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, dude.
I always like conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because we go into depth on like all of the we went into depth on the fiscal reasons behind your choices and all of that stuff, and I think a lot of people will take they'll get a lot of information from this that will go to show, it's not one or the other. That's actually it's right there. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So thank you guys for tuning in. Peace out.